Now in this talk I want to use some items to do a little demonstration. A few words about the early life of the Buddha. The Buddha was born into very privileged circumstances in the 6th century BC, over 2,500 years ago now. When the Buddha was in his 20s, he became very concerned about the suffering he saw in the world around him, and about human mortality. And he wondered, as so many people have done, what is the point of our life in this world when we live such a very short time, when we're subject to illness, decay, old age, one day death. And he set out to find the answer, not only for himself, but for the sake of others as well. A dominant religious teaching at the time was that the human being is body, mind, and a soul. The word in Sanskrit is Atman, an Atman. And that the true reality to which we spiritually aspire is Brahma, the world soul. The Atman, in this view of things, is imprisoned in the body. And the desires, longings that relate to the body constitute spiritual fetters which bind the Atman and prevent it from returning to oneness with the world soul, with Brahma. When the Buddha left home and began to undertake a serious religious practice, he joined the ascetics who were trying to free themselves of these fetters, free themselves of the desires, and thus liberate their soul, the Atman, to return to Brahma. And a chief focus of their religious practices involved mortification or denial of bodily desire. So they would often eat less food than they desired, and down to the point of sometimes starving themselves. They would do practices which involve very painful ordeals to try to conquer desire. The Buddha was very good at these, very determined, these practices, to the point where he almost died. He was starving himself, becoming weak. At a certain point he thought, well, if I keep going like this, I'm going to kill myself. And I still will not have realized the destruction of desire, will not have realized spiritual liberation. So he decided to take another tack. And he took nourishment, accepted a kind offering from a lay woman of food, sat down and decided to just be still and just start with the acceptance of things as they are, rather than trying to just conquer the body and its desires. When he did this, the other people who were training with him left him in disgust, believing that he had abandoned the true path. But in actual fact, the Buddha began to do, at that point, the meditation that I have been describing in this series of talks. He later called this the finding of the middle way. The middle way meaning a way that is neither, on the one hand, simply indulging oneself all the time, indulging the desires all the time, so one is simply always being swept away by desire, and on the other hand, constantly in a war against one's body and against one's desires. For that matter, against one's thoughts and one's feelings as well. A middle path that not only is between these extremes, but actually transcends them. And this began the Buddha's great enlightenment. And as part of that, as an important fundamental aspect of enlightenment, the Buddha realized that there was something a little bit not quite accurate in the view of the Atman and its separation from Brahma, the world soul, its imprisonment in the body. So, here's a little demonstration here. Imagine this yellow ball, one of my balls belonging to my dogs here, and a little pellet here. Imagine this is the big yellow ball is Brahma, the world soul. This is the Atman, imprisoned right now in my hand. Before his enlightenment, the Buddha had thought, before he found the middle path, the Buddha had thought that the spiritual problem, the fundamental spiritual problem of human beings is that we got to get this little world, this little Atman, this little soul, back, dissolved into Brahma. And it's being prevented from doing that by being imprisoned in the body and fettered by desire. And there's some truth in this. There's this much truth in it, that if we get swept away in our desires, there's always at least the illusion of a separation from our true self. We, as it were, create a disharmony in ourselves, a spiritual disharmony. Because there's more to us than just body and mind. But what the Buddha found in his enlightenment was that this separation, this seeming separation, is actually not the reality of things. It's more like this. Let's take the Atman now and shoot it away. We don't need it now. Let's take the ball and put some dots on it. Okay? Imagine that each of these dots is a facet on an infinitely faceted sphere. Infinite number of facets. I don't happen to have a multifaceted sphere, or I'd bring one along. But imagine that each dot is a facet on an infinitely faceted sphere, a sphere with uncountable number of facets. Okay. This is like the true self, the sphere. And this body and mind, what I call me, it's one of these facets. You're one of these facets. A cockroach is one of these facets. An atom is one of these facets. A rock is one of these facets. We don't have to get, this is not a course in physics. We don't have to get concerned about the, many questions this could give rise to in the mind. Don't worry about them, they don't matter. My dogs who own this ball, really, this is, they're facets here. All existence is facets. Our perceptions, our thoughts are facets. Our feelings are facets. This body, its desires are facets. All good and evil are facets on this infinitely faceted, infinitely vast true self. So what is the nature of the spiritual problem of our life? That we don't realize this and act accordingly. And that out of our ignorance of this truth, that we're always actually part of this infinite goodness. We judge ourselves and others. We long for something to fill the inner void. We become frustrated and angry. We lose the sight of the treasure that's actually within ourselves. We lose sight of it. But the fact that we lose sight of it is also one of these facets. We're never separate from it, even for an instant. One of the great Zen masters, Tozan, when he was enlightened, he said, "I am not him, he is all of me." This little body and mind here, my so-called self, this frail being here, is not this infinite reality. Yet it is all of me. There's nothing in me that is not part of it. And there's nothing in you that is not part of this. Another way that my master often spoke of this is he said that all is one and all is different. And that to experience and live within the mind and heart of true enlightenment is to see with the all is one as it were with one eye, and the all is different with the other. I am not God, and there is nothing in me that is not of God. I am not the true self. There is nothing in me that is not of the true self. I am not the Buddha. There is nothing in me that is not of the Buddha. I am not the eternal. There is nothing in me that is not of the eternal. So what are the practical implications of this understanding? The practical implication in terms of spiritual training. And this practice of meditation is that we do not have to set out to try to destroy or conquer the desires in the body. Rather, we need to learn how to make the proper use of them. In this view of things, since this body and mind are aspects or facets of the true self, they should be treated with great respect and reverence. And that if I live in a way that abuses the body and mind, if I live in a way that harms body and mind, then I create obstacles for myself for realizing my oneness. with the true self, for realizing the true self. This leads us naturally to the subject of the next talk, which is the Buddha's teaching on karma.